Good morning, illustrious students. Questions for today. The concept map that we discussed on yesterday as it leads to the growth and involvement of conflict in the world a second time, World War II. Let's focus on our essential questions as well as today take some time to focus on vocabulary. Our notes should have prepared us to discuss four key elements that led to World War II: the Treaty of Versailles, the Great Depression, world leaders, and governments. When we talk about the Treaty of Versailles, we need to realize how it actually weakened Germany and what position it left its citizens in and their need to regain their former glory or return to power. The League of Nations that had been established after World War I had the hope of keeping world peace, but we now know in hindsight that that was not the case. So be able to trace the ideas of how what they used to restore or rather create peace wound up turning into conflict. Then the world experienced another political, social, and economic disaster called the Great Depression. It was not just something that was experienced in the United States, but it was particularly felt in other European countries as well, with specific interest being given to Germany and Italy, which both found themselves so distraught and so destitute that it led to changes in their governments. So we talk about how these totalitarian regimes came into power and how it led to the leadership of people like Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, and Tojo in Japan, and how these three would ultimately ally together to become what we learned to be the Axis powers during World War II. The governments that were established during this time included governments that favored the Nazi Party in Germany, the Fascist Party in Italy, and we find other countries in the European nations appeasing these countries, not wanting to get into another conflict, not wanting to get into another debate, so they kind of pacify and placate or go along with the demands of these other leaders to quote-unquote keep the peace. For Tojo, that meant the red light, psych, the green light on Japanese expansion. During this time, Japan takes over almost all of Asia in a quest for resources, supplies, and materials. Make certain that your concept maps all relate to and show your understanding of these points that you see here posted and the information provided. As it relates to our essential questions, we should be able to answer what major conflicts occurred during 1935 and 1960. Remember, yesterday I called this the season of conflict. Tell me what happened and also be able to explain to me how or why it happened. Number two, how did these conflicts affect the United States? Each and every conflict, understand what bearing it has on this country or why this country would be involved. Keep also in mind that after World War I, the United States Congress said, we don't want to deal with European issues. We want to stick to our own guns. That was the reason they refused to join the League of Nations. So how does the United States then ultimately find itself affected or impacted by any of these conflicts going on between 1935 and 1960? How or did any of these conflicts lead to others? Meaning, as we look at the series of events, are there chain reactions that caused others of these events to occur? 4, what was the arms race? Be able to describe how it impacted the United States. And lastly, 5, trace the actions of the space race and be able to explain innovation in the United States. Then we go to vocabulary. Today's vocabulary activity, want you to create a Freyer map such as this. I've used one of the words that I provided, pact, P-A-C-T. Word goes in the center circle. Top left, give me a definition. A pact is a formal agreement between two parties. Then use that word in a sentence. My friends and I formed a sobriety pact before the prom. Give me a synonym or similar word, a bond, a covenant, an agreement. And then in the bottom right, your choice. Either give me an illustration of the word, your own idea, or give me an antonym. Tell me what the word is not. The other vocabulary words that you needed to know include fascism, Holocaust, Manhattan Project, draft, rationing, internment, containment theory, minority, capitalism, communism, bond, and neutrality. Fascism is authoritarian nationalism with a dictator in power, and they also control all industry and commerce. The Holocaust is a mass slaughter, often includes nuclear warfare in this day and age. The Manhattan Project was a private research opportunity that led to the creation of atomic and nuclear weapons. The draft, also called conscription, conscription, is forced enlistment into the military during wartime. Rationing is to give a fixed amount of a raw material or product like sugar or coffee or other things that people need that the government also might need during wartime to supply troops. Internment is being confined as a prisoner and typically for political or military reasons. Containment theory is the idea that people are pushed or pulled into crime, meaning you are either pressured by your environment or other elements, or you are tempted or drawn into it because you have some level of lack. Minority is any underrepresented population, meaning much less in number than the majority. Capitalism is trade and industry that is controlled by private industry or business and is driven by money as opposed to the government. Communism is the establishment of social classes. Everything is owned by the public. People work and are paid according to their needs, not according to their earnings or how hard that they have worked. Bonds are government promises to pay back money with interest by a certain maturity date. This allows the government to borrow money when it is needed for major projects. And neutrality is not supporting or helping either side in a conflict. Using all of these words, be able to complete a Frere map such as the one that I have provided.